Hey, this is Dr. Rutledge, and I have a nice section on fruit from Dr. Robert Lustig. And I think this is worth seeing. You'll see some links on how to listen to the entire presentation, but there's a lot of questions about the sugar in fruit. And so we'll go ahead and start that right now.
And probably the single most problematic foodstuff in terms of brain health is sugar.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions about fruit. Because you mentioned, orange juice and you freeze it and then, and people asking, well, I buy frozen berries. Is that not good now? How many pieces of fruit can I eat a day? And also, yeah, it's a fruit, but it's been fermented. How much alcohol can I drink? So lots of questions about fruit. Talk about fruit a little bit, because people.
So everybody wants to know about fruit. I mean, they hear fructose and they go, fruit. Oh, fructose and fruit. Yes. Well, right. The amount of sugar in any fruit, okay, is dwarfed by the amount of fiber, and the fiber prevents that sugar absorption from the gut into the bloodstream. You are protecting the liver. So there are two kinds of fiber in fruit: soluble and insoluble. Okay, soluble is like pectins or inulin, things that would hold jelly together.
Yeah.
Cellulose is like insoluble fiber, the stringy stuff in celery. All right, so you need both. Fruit has both. Now, if you consume a whole piece of fruit, you are getting both. And what happens is the insoluble fiber forms a lattice work on the inside of the duodenum, like a fishnet. The soluble fiber are globular. Those molecules are globular. They plug the holes in the fishnet. You can actually see it on electron microscopy, this whitish gel that forms on the inside of the duodenum. And that acts as a secondary barrier. And that prevents early absorption of all of those mono and disaccharides, all that sugar, from getting to the liver. So you are protecting the liver. Well, if you don't absorb it early, what happens to it? Well, it goes further down the intestine, goes to the next part of the intestine called the jejunum, and that's where the bacteria are. And so the bacteria will chew it up for its own purposes. So even though you consumed it, even though it passed your lips, even though it registered as a, quote, calorie, unquote.
We'll get to that later.
In fact, you never absorbed it because your bacteria got it instead. So you are feeding your gut. So you're protecting your liver and you're feeding your gut. So even though you consumed the fruit, the sugar wasn't for you. It was for your microbiome. So fruit is fine. Now, if you strain that fiber out, if you put it in a Breville or a Vitamix and you basically destroy the insoluble fiber and shear it to smithereens, you can't set up that fishnet. You've basically cut too many holes in the fishnet for it to work, to be a barrier. And now the mono and disaccharides will flood your liver, just like I talked about before. And so that's not so good. Now, the soluble fiber will still be there, so you might be feeding your gut. And this is a case, like I said at the beginning, where, it doesn't do one of the two things. It doesn't protect your liver, but it does feed your gut. And so the data show that juice is sort of halfway in between. It's not as good as fruit, but it's better than, say, soda.
Yeah. So for people, and again, I'm jumping the gun but you mentioned smoothies already. So, and I've heard you say before, and you just said it, try not to have fruit smoothies because you've just, as you put it, made them into, no longer useful or as useful as they could be. So eat the fruit. And if you're going to have a smoothie, make sure it's mostly vegetables with maybe.
Right. I mean, if it's a green smoothie, there's nothing to protect the liver from.
Got it.
In which case, then it's not a big problem. But fruit smoothies can be an issue.
Okay, two more questions, and then we're going to move on to diets. But before going back a little bit, because we talked about lab tests and what to ask your doctor for with regards to your liver, but how do you test